On a warm afternoon in 1949, tens of thousands of people gathered at an air race in Cleveland, Ohio. They came to see speed, they came to see power, they came to see the future of aviation. What they witnessed instead was tragedy. That moment would end America's golden age of air racing, but it would not end the story of the aeroplane at its center. Because the P-51 Mustang, the fighter that helped win World War II, was only just beginning its most unexpected chapter. This is the story of what happened after the World War ended, when the Mustang refused to disappear. When World War II ended in 1945, the United States faced a problem no one had planned for. There were simply too many airplanes. More than 15,000 P-51 Mustangs had been built. Factories went silent. Airfields filled with parked fighters stretching to the horizon. Keeping them made no financial sense. So the unthinkable happened. Perfectly functional combat aircraft were smashed, cut apart and burned for scrap. Bombers that had survived flak over Europe were destroyed by cranes and cutting torches. Back home, most people looked away, but a few didn't. Teenagers, veterans, mechanics, people who understood what these machines meant twitched in disbelief as history was erased, and while governments scrapped them, others bought Mustangs for the price of a used car. What looked like the end was actually an escape. By the late 1940s, the military believed propeller fighters were obsolete, jets were faster, jets were modern, jets were the future. Then came Korea, when war broke out in 1950. American jets arrived fast, but they couldn't stay. They burned fuel too quickly. They needed long paved runways. They had minutes over the battlefield. The Mustang had none of those problems. It could loiter for hours. It could fly from dirt strips. It could carry bombs, rockets, and napalm. So the fighter that had been written off was rushed back into service. But this was not the high-altitude war it was designed for. Mustangs flew low, dangerously, over tanks, trucks, and supply lines, and their liquid-cooled engines made them fragile. A single bullet could doom. Pilot. Losses were severe. Hundreds of aircraft were destroyed. Many pilots never returned. Yet the Mustang held the line when nothing else could. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't safe. But it worked. While America moved on to jets, the Mustang spread across the world. Europe. Asia. The Middle East. Latin America. Nations with limited budgets suddenly had access to long-range high-performance fighters. In Israel, Mustangs arrived in secret, disguised as farm equipment to bypass embargoes. That they became the backbone of a newborn air force fighting for survival. In the Sinai Desert, Mustangs flew so low they used their wings and propellers to cut enemy telephone lines, collapsing communications during combat operations. In the Caribbean, Central America, and Southeast Asia, they flew counter-insurgency missions for decades, and in 1969, long after Jez ruled the sky, Mustangs fought Corsairs in the last dogfights between propeller aircraft in history. The airplane that was supposed to be obsolete kept finding wars that needed it back in the United States. Mustangs found a different calling. Racing. With armor stripped away and engines pushed far beyond wartime limits. These aircraft flew faster than their designers ever intended. They screamed around pylons at over 400 miles per hour. It was thrilling, it was dangerous, and sometimes it was fatal. By 1950 the racers were banned and the Mustangs were grounded once again, but they weren't forgotten. In the Nevada desert, air racing was reborn. At Reno, Mustangs returned faster, louder, and more extreme than ever. Some of those airframes were already 30 years old. They didn't care. While some chased speed, others chased preservation. Collectors, restorers, and former pilots tracked Mustangs across the globe. They rebuilt wrecks. They recreated paint schemes. They learned how to keep Merlin engines alive decades after production ended. Museums were founded. Ash grew. The Warbird movement was born. What once sold for scrap now sold for millions. Today, more than 100 Mustangs still fly. Not replicas, not reproductions. The real machines. The P-51 Mustang was never supposed to last this long. It was designed in a rush, built for a single war, meant to be replaced. Instead, it fought in new wars, served new nations. Raced. Survived. And today, when that engine starts and the propeller turns, it connects us directly to history. Not preserved behind glass, but alive. The Mustang didn't just survive. WWII. It outlived it. If you enjoyed this story, Consider liking the video, it helps keep these histories alive. Subscribe for more untold aviation stories, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because history only survives if we choose to remember it. If you want, I can